Good afternoon, good morning, welcome everybody. Gonna you guys are blessed with a new face here today, so we'll do intros in just a second here in case you didn't see the invite Anne Marie shared earlier, but we will introduce our CEO Kevin Degnan in just a second here. Um, welcome for our first time or welcome back. If I see some OGs on here, so. Always good to see the familiar faces. So give us just a minute and then we'll do quick housekeeping stuff and dive in here. And if you could, as always, please fire away with questions. Fire at will. It doesn't have to be related to anything that we're talking about here, right? It can be very specific, or if you had a student walk in your office or a parent, whatever, and you're looking for our guidance, please don't hesitate. But do me a favor and throw that in the Q&A because we'll keep an eye on that and we'll do our best to have an answer for you. And if any of you guys are at WACAC, the let's see if I can get it. Western Association of College Admissions Counselors, maybe.
Nailed it. You
Um,
nailed it.
there you go. So we have our Peggy Keogh, our director of education, and then Anne-Marie Sanderson, our high school partnership manager. They're both out in Vegas right now at that conference. So we get a booth there. So please say hi. I know we're giving away a TV, I believe, as well. So go say hi. And then we were let's see, we have NYACAC, so the New England one coming up in about a month or so here as well. So make sure. Hopefully you can come to that. We're gonna be hosting a Cappy Hour, as we call it, for that one at the place that happens to be my local establishment. So I promise you're gonna have some fun there. So please make a point to come and come say hi. Okay, so task at hand today, right? Obviously, we got who we consider to be a special guest here today. I'll kind of quickly talk about what's going on, right, from a calendar standpoint, and specifically focused on class 2025, right? Your graduating seniors here, and what's the latest and greatest with those folks in our space. And then the main reason I wanted to have, as we call them, Degs on today, is to talk about parts of our position paper that we put out, I don't know, a month or so ago, thereabouts. And if you haven't read it yet, please do. Or if you want a copy, please let us know. Happy to get it to you. But to oversimplify it, we kind of took all these massive changes that are going on in higher education, or at least being proposed in higher education, and said, you know what, if we kind of had a blank canvas, how would we, quote unquote, fix higher education in the United States? And I think that's kind of what the premise of that position paper is, where we're trying our best to say, like, instead of just complaining about what we don't think is just or doesn't work the right way now, how would we fix it, right? And that's the point. And we're just really trying to engage in a conversation, and we especially love to hear from our stakeholders. And obviously, you guys are at the top of that at the top of that list here, right? We want your feedback. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? What are we missing? I'm sure we have blind spots on there, and that's why, again, we just want to talk about it with people. So specifically today, there's a few changes that have been that are happening or have been proposed, right, in higher education. And there's a lot of overlap with our position paper there. So we're just going to kind of talk through those. If you guys do not partner with us already, right? If you're just kind of been a fly on the wall, I see a lot of our current partners on there. I'm putting a link in the chat right now. Book some time with us. We just want to introduce ourselves, learn a little bit more about your high school, your school district, figure out how we can provide additional support, obviously specifically around our sweet spot that is, financial aid, scholarships, education, and resources, right? So please take some time to meet with us. We just want to make you better and kind of support you however we can. 90% of the high school partners we work with across the country just take advantage of our free resources. So just kind of keep that in your back pocket here. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Kevin Degnan, best bud of mine. I'll give you and my boss, right? We thread that needle, but I think
Most days. Yeah.
most days, right? Most days. So again, I'll give you the super speed background. We played football, but Went to college together, Stonehill College, way back when, I guess 25 years ago, right? Started 25 years ago, almost exactly. Again, we're great friends, remain friends, took kind of two different professional paths. After college, I got right into this space, really. Not a huge, I haven't done anything else in my career outside of being in this higher education space and try to help families just navigate this process. But I've always had Diggs be a advisor of sorts, or just he's a I don't know, a more detail oriented, in the numbers, in the weeds type of person than I am. So I always wanted to use him as a resource. What am I missing here? What are we doing right? What do we need to be thinking about? So he's kind of a informal, again, advisor, consultant, whatever you want to call it. And we'd always kind of joked, hopefully at some point we can formally join forces and attack this problem together. And the stars finally aligned. I don't know, 3-4 years ago, thereabouts, and that actually came to fruition, which has been really awesome in a lot of ways. But Degs, I always say I think you have an interesting background, trajectory, etc. So if you want to share to these new faces, please do, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, buddy. And thanks for having me on. Excited to talk through some of the stuff today. Yeah, you always put me on the spot to kind of give my background. I don't really enjoy talking about it, but I guess it has formed, as anybody, it forms the things I think about and care about and whatnot. And so I'll just highlight a couple of things quick. So when Matt, we graduated Stonehill again 20 years ago, and Matt got on this, financial planning, college planning, consultation, a consultant path. I went a little different. I almost went to law school, ended up going to the Peace Corps instead. Very much loved that experience. I was a small business development volunteer. I was kind of a consultant for them, right? For these locals in Peru that was trying to start businesses or grow businesses, take advantage of tourism and other resources. It was a wonderful experience, but it kind of exposed to me that I didn't know enough about business that I wanted to, right? I studied economics and math at Stonehill, but didn't have enough applicable skills. I thought for, being an effective sort of business manager or business consultant. So I went and got my MBA, University of South Carolina, go Gamecocks. It was an international program, was great, got some great exposure, got recruited by some big international companies, did some work overseas. Loved that, but then I got into investment banking, working with high growth tech companies, which really overlapped with where Matt and our other co-founder Bill Rabbit's company was going, College Aid Pro. And so I started being a bit of a consigliere for what they were doing, and just how I saw successful companies grow and things I would do. And the long story short, Matt said, like, all right, all the things you think we should do, can you come here and do them? And I said, sure. Right. And my new favorite line, right, Carpy, is for people who've done home improvements, you'll hear this, some caulking and some paint make a carpenter what he ain't, right? So I joke that I'm the caulking and the paint. I make the carpenter what he ate here at College Aid Pro. But it's great. Yeah, appreciate coming on today and talking about all this stuff. I'm very passionate about it too, right? A lot of the changes happening. I can agree with some wholeheartedly. I'm flabbergasted by others, but to Matt's point, our position here was like, how can we be solution oriented, right? We don't want to complain and react to the stuff happening and saying why it's faulty or why it's broken. So we challenged ourselves to say, well, if we were in charge and at a blank canvas, how would we rebuild everything? And so that is kind of the core premise of the position paper. And we don't claim to have all the answers. We try to be very informed and thoughtful and data driven about the suggestions we come up with. But yeah, it's a discussion, right? A lot of it is like, here's our best guess. Here's what we think would happen. Here's what we think things kind of went awry. And, as the government's trying to make changes, like I can see some similar thought processes going on right on their side. Matt and I were just talking before we jumped on. We're like, I think I know what they're trying to accomplish with fill in the blank. We don't always agree, right? We're like, wow, I would take that part and I don't get that part. But yeah, we thought it was a great time for me to come on and kind of just have some of this conversation live and share some of the things we're seeing. And as Matt said, like families we're here to help families first and foremost. But to me, high school counselors are 1B in that relationship, right? You're the gatekeepers. You see the stuff on the front lines and understand the stuff better than, someone like me will ever know. So tapping into you and keeping you involved is my obligation, right? I'm required to do that in order to come up with the right solution or the best solution. So, yeah, thanks for having me. Excited.
Not well said in the kind of fun little setup today. I think we're like a wall separating us or something, but we're here at MIT. We're on campus at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So it's kind of a beautiful setup, specifically the Sloan
Yep.
School of Management. So we're lucky to be able
Nice
to,
spring day here in Boston. Can't beat it. Yeah.
yeah, take advantage of the facilities here. We're trying to, like, get the vibe of the college experience here. Okay, so let's kind of a couple things we want to pick off here. Like I said, we're going to start with, all right, what's going on right now with class 2025. Obviously, we're post 5/1, so we've submitted our deposits. We know where we're going to college next year. Um, Kind of two major things left. Number one, more than I have ever seen by far in my career, we're seeing colleges come up with more money, better deals, better financial aid, and/or scholarship offers for students after 5/1 again. And there's really not a close second. Last year was kind of the second closest, but again, a distant second. I share that to say I would communicate with your students, with your families, et cetera. Guys, if you have not appealed yet to your colleges, even though you put in your deposit, it's not too late. And in addition, we have seen college families that had already submitted a appeal and they were denied, but they went back again after 5/1 and had some success. And the other use case is we've had families that had a successful appeal, quote unquote, successful appeal, right? They got some additional money on the first try before 5/1, have since gone back after 5/1 and submitted another appeal and has got more money. So this is still happening. So in my opinion, it is very much just kind of worth a note to share to say, hey guys, colleges are still, even though you've committed, right? Colleges are still offering more discounts. So again, I'm just sharing that because it's been pretty wild to see, right? So I would just kind of share that out with your families. So the next big step here, right, is like, okay, how am I going to pay the bill? I have some resources, but I don't know if I should use it all up front. Should I spread it out over 4 years? And if I have to borrow, what's the best way to do that? So for the next really 3 months through the summer through August, all of our education for parents will be focused on those questions, right? When do I use what resources? And if I have to borrow, how do I do that the right way? So just kind of keep your eye out. We will be continuing to share different again webinars, right, and different resources around all things borrowing, all things paying the bill. And just as an FYI for you all, we've been really working hard internally and specifically us, kind of on this is something Degs and I have been tag teaming with some other folks on the leadership front, but we're proactively reaching out to all the lenders in this space, and there's not a ton of them, right? And especially now that the private sector is going to, if some of these changes are to happen in the Department of Education, the private sector is going to completely take over, and we're trying to reach out to each one of these, form relationships, and specifically figure out, can we kind of use our community, right, our College Aid Pro community, and all the parents and students that are engage with us in some capacity and say, hey, if we take advantage of your loan, can we get some type of special, discounts, rates, whatever you want to say. So again, more to come there, but we're working really, really hard to basically say, can we get, special treatment, for lack of a better term here, for our end users. So again, just keep an eye out for that. And again, we'll be communicating this, but that's what we're really, really trying to do, is just kind of, again, leverage the power of this community and get a better deal, essentially.
Yeah. Matt, if I could jump in too, just for some more background on why we're fighting this fight, and I'm pretty confident we're going to be successful. If lenders in general, whether it's for a car or for a house, right, there's always some sort of collateral, right, and the rate that they give out and all like that, that's the math that's going on behind the scenes is oftentimes tied to will the borrower default, right? It's expected default rates times the risk involved, and this is aggregate them all together, and the capital markets that's how rates kind of trickle down to the individual, right? But there are certain things about certain families right? Whether it's your credit history, usually the most important, the biggest factor they'll consider, or your income or the number of assets you have, right? These are all things that say, if you default, do we have something to do here, right? But this is the things that they're looking at. And our argument to the lenders, and they've been open to it, they just are very slow. But our argument is that our users, right, and our families that engage in the webinars, are doing their homework, are doing all of their due diligence throughout this process, by definition, are very much committed to doing this and doing this the smart, right way, right? So we're doing our best to provide these lenders even as much concrete, hard data as we can to say our families default at a lower rate, they deserve special treatment. And we've gotten kind of like the broad green light that, yes, that makes a lot of sense to these lenders. We just got to kind of keep pushing them forward and see how much of a discount we can get for our families. Things move slowly, but that's kind of the premise of the fight, right? Is like power in numbers, which we have, and we're going, thanks to a lot of, the counselors we work with, getting more families involved, showing that going through all of these steps on the platform and the engagement, and just being a thoughtful consumer should have a benefit if and when you have to borrow, right? And again, that premise has been like, well received. It's just getting the details out there. As Matt said, like, these guys move kind of slow on purpose, right? But we're not going to slow down with it, and we're very much, it's a huge value we can add to people who engage in our community here. So I just want to add that additional color if it's helpful. And again, open as thoughts or suggestions there, but power in numbers, empowering the data, and we're doing what we can for you guys.
Yeah, 100%. No, it's great context, right? And again, it's all just like every step of this process. The more educated the consumer is, the better the end result's going to be, right? And so that's what we're trying to accomplish here with this part of the journey, right? Of like, all right, let's help you understand kind of yourself, your family, and then what's going to be the best option for your family. Because something we say, you'll hear us say on these presentations, like, if we meet with 10 different families, we might have 10 different recommendations in terms of, what's the best fit for them. So we want to help them get to the right spot and obviously make those options as palpable as possible, given that it's not fun to borrow money. Okay, so let's see. So I want to hit on three things here that are kind of either happening with the Department of Education or being proposed. And there's some really interesting overlaps again when it comes to our position paper. So here's some of the things that are being proposed. The big one, and again, if you've been following along, you've been hearing us say this for several weeks here, but it's kind of been officially proposed that the PLUS loan no longer exists, right? As of July 1st, 2026, this administration is proposing that there's no such thing as the PLUS loan. And of all our federal, 90% of people borrow through the federal government, right? And a lot of that, a big chunk of that, is parents via the PLUS loan. So that would be a huge loan going away, a huge loan, and the most popular loan for parents that are sending their kids to college. The other federal program that is going to change is that right now the federal direct student loan, right? So the total of $27,000 that students can borrow over 4 years, they're entitled to that if they complete the FAFSA. If they're eligible, 19,000 of that, up to 19,000 of that, could be subsidized. What that means is that the federal government is picking up the interest for that loan. They're paying zero interest while the kid's in school, and then they get a 6-month grace period afterward. This bill is proposing that subsidized portion goes away. That one I don't think is going to necessarily be a huge impact. The PLUS loan is going to be a huge impact that again I think we'll expand upon a little bit here. Another I think meaningful change is some changes within the Pell Grant, right? Not all of these have been flushed out, or at least they haven't been shared publicly. These changes they've kind of hinted, not so subtly, that it's gonna be harder to qualify for, as in you're gonna have to have a lower income, less resources in order to be eligible for the Pell program. Again, there's been some insinuation that certainly that Pell Grant is not going to be increased. Maybe it gets lowered. But I think one of the more tangible ones, and again, I had a problem with this 2 weeks ago for any of you that were paying attention, but you're no longer going to be eligible for the Pell program if you're going to school part-time. Right. And I talked about the fact that I understand the logic and that they're saying, well, kids that go to school part-time, specifically community college, most of them don't graduate, so this is not a good use of resources. Um, that I understood, but I am against it for the biggest reason being that pocket of students that go to school part-time because they have to work. And in order to make it happen, they have to do both of those things. I don't think it's right that those folks are going to be punished. And the third kind of bullet point here that again got talked about more or more details were released this week is this concept that we love universally. Again, there's devils in the details, of course, but we love this concept of colleges being more accountable, colleges having formal skin in the game here. And again, we got some more details. We got to see some more details that got released this week. And one of the really interesting ones is that, you know, these loans, these federal loans that were in forbearance, if you were defaulted on your loans, right, they were in forbearance for the last 5 years, meaning you essentially weren't getting punished for those. They went back into repayment on May 5th. Right. So these are 5 million borrowers that are going to, whether they like it or not, having to start to repay those loans that they haven't had to make payments on in 5 years. The Department of Education is be taking a very close look at who's repaying those loans, and there could be the proposed ramifications here. If your college graduates at your college are not repaying these federal loans, there can be consequences. And again, that's going to kind of be a theme that's being proposed here with this administration of look at colleges. You know, these students and these families are investing right in your in the degree that you're offering. Essentially, are you holding up to your end of the bargain? Do you have enough kind of, again, skin in the game here? So, uh, like I said, devil's in the details there, but we love some of those concepts. So I don't know where you want to start here, Degs. But you know, but I think it's relevant to talk about some of our thoughts, you know, in our position paper as it pertains, maybe specifically to those three things, right? Federal government loans, you know, the how do we manage this Pell Grant program, even for part-time kids, and of course the accountability piece.
Yeah, I mean, those 3 points, you know, intentionally or not, match pretty well, right, with our 3 buckets of the 3 main themes of the position paper, right? And we're going to flush these out and provide more specifics in the coming weeks and months here. But like the first one is like, and this is the, you know, the headline is turn off the easy money for college, right? And the background there, and this is you know, this kind of touches on the removing the Parent Plus loan or just the Plus loan program. The cost of college is out of control, right? You see this across the board, 100,000 plus in different schools. The average cost of college is pretty unattainable for many students and families. And if you just kind of stare at it from the market forces, you know, lens of like what is the market dynamics happening here that are creating this sort of college cost bubble, it kind of originates with this just anybody and everybody can get loans from the federal government for more or less unlimited amounts, right? It's not truly unlimited, but you know, more than they should probably borrow. And the quality of what it's being spent on and who's borrowing it doesn't matter, right? And that by itself, if you talk to any economist that they'd say, well, all right, that's going to misalign a lot of incentives, right? And what I want to speak to the end result, because if we talk about how to fix it, some people might get irked and be like, that's not the way to fix it. But it would just talk about what happens downstream from those decisions, right? If there's easy money for anybody who wants to borrow, doesn't matter where they're spending it, and it doesn't matter who they are, what their income is, assets, anything, right? Just you're guaranteed, it's an entitlement, basically. You're entitled to money for college in the United States currently. What that means is there's going to be a market created on the other end to accept and receive that money, right? There's going to be entities that are incentivized to just take advantage of that money, right? And I'm going to make some parallels to the housing bubble back in the 2007, 2008, 9, 10 range. There was easy capital for buying homes, right? It was very complicated. The reasons why it was credit default swaps and all these things, but it's basically these home mortgage was getting packaged into these bigger assets that were put into the, you know, these capital markets that were aggregated based on the criteria, and the individual borrower, for that home that was considered to get rolled up was lost along the way. And the incentive that was created was just lend as much as you can, get people borrowing and buying homes. Again, doesn't matter who they are, right? Or what the market is that they're buying in, or the potential future value of the home, right? There's a lot of just misaligned incentives that said just pump out as many loans as you can, and don't worry, you'll have someone that'll buy that loan from you. And that whole process is what led to the housing bubble, right? Home prices went up because everybody was buying. No one seemed to care what was underlying the loans there until it was too late, right? And that's exactly what's happening for college right now, right? It's colleges basically have seen that, well, I got a free flowing, spigot of cash flow that's coming from the federal government and private lenders, right? Because one big thing I left out here is you can get basically as much money as you need, guaranteed, no matter who you are, what you're spending it on. Oh, and by the way, you can never get rid of it in bankruptcy. And never is not true. You can in some circumstances, but it's extremely hard. Basically never, right? So any borrower should assume you're never going to be able to get rid of it in bankruptcy. So if I'm on the receiving end of this money, guess what? I'm going to find ways to just grease the skids, get as many people borrowing as I possibly can, and I'm going to keep jacking up my costs because there's no end in sight. No one's going to say no, right? You're going to find ways. That's why I'm kind of babbling a little bit, but this is how a bubble happens. You just got unlimited funds, willing recipients on the other end. And the problem is, in this case, you have borrowers in the middle that are the only ones that are on the hook for the ramifications. Hence the student debt crisis, right? 1.7, $1.8 trillion. So that's kind of the dynamic we're at. And if you kind of chase it back to its source, you'd say, all right, we got to stop giving away so much easy free money at the source, which is currently, because Matt's point, 90% of loans are originating from the federal government. Federal loan programs need to be reformed and reconsidered. And quite frankly, the plus loan going away, it's going to hurt some families and limit what they can do in the short term in terms of paying for college. But it's a correction the market desperately needs, right? We need to turn off this, everybody gets money no matter what. I don't care who you are, where you're spending it. You get this money. All you do is sign here. That's ludicrous, right? And that's as crazy as that sounds. That's how it's existed, right? There's some debate in discussion still. At least I don't have my mind set up entirely on it, but like the federal direct loan program, right? That $5,500, every kid's entitled to. You fill out the FAFSA for freshman year, it goes up sophomore, junior, senior year. I think that has to be looked at too. I think that has to be reconsidered. Is that something everybody should be entitled to? I think it should be tied in a lot of ways to who's borrowing and where it's being spent. I think that's just the way markets work. Like capitalism, I think we all believe in it, right? Americans, by our nature, capitalism is part of our DNA. It is bastardizing some of the incentives of an open market, right? And I'm not saying we need a complete open market, and we're not saying that at College Aid Pro. It's just that's part of it. That's a huge part of this problem, right? The cost of college no longer represents what you're getting because the money to go there is too easy to get, right? And again, the system's been set up to facilitate people borrowing, period. Just like the housing bubble was facilitated for people to borrow for houses just to get the volume of house sales up and up and up, and people buying second and third homes, hoping to rent them. And these things went off, like crazy. We have the similar thing in undergrad and graduate school. I'll just chase the next degree. I'll borrow as much as I have to. Eventually it'll work out. I'll find a way. The reality is we're seeing it day to day, year by year. It's not happening that way. So yeah, Matt, I'd love to hear your opinion too. I know we agree on most of this, but to me, the source starts with, we got to turn off the free money spigot. We can handle the ramifications downstream from that. There will be many, but I think the pain will be worth it, and we'll have to really reevaluate that. And that's where some of the other pieces of the position paper come in, where that's not it, right? That's like the first part. You turn off the easy spigot, you let consumers get rid of these loans in bankruptcy. It'll fix sort of the financing piece of the college market, which should reset costs, reset prices, reset everything. Not overnight, but it would happen. And then we could talk about accessibility and accountability and how you reward achievement. I think there's clear ways to do that too.
Yeah, and we've had, I think, some really healthy debates internally, because I think we're all in clear agreement. It's like, look, I think a lot of folks would agree or that arguably the number one variable for this insane spike in college costs is the Parent Plus loan specifically, right? Obviously, it's not that simple. It's nuanced, and there's a lot of variables. But if that's not the number one reason, it's on a very short list, right? I think it took me a little bit longer to get to, well, I think my initial stance when you and I were having this conversation was, we need that federal direct student loan, and students need to be able to borrow that, again, $27,000 that they're entitled to no matter what. But I've since backed away from that because with that kind of same premise, because that still tells the college, well, let's just start at $27,000 over the course of 4 years, in terms of how we price, our institution, because we're guaranteed to get that each year, right? So if we know that that's coming from every single student, no matter what, again, that's kind of going against the premise that we agree with that is tied to the plus, right?
Agreed, right? It is. It does just sort of like it mutates the market incentives and dynamics, right? Like let's think about it a different way, right? And this is a thought experiment I was doing myself as like, what if these like loan entitlements, which they kind of are, right? You're entitled to this amount of loan, which applied to other things. So imagine every American could borrow $5,500 for a car, right? From the federal government, low interest rate, no matter what. What would happen to the price of cars? They would go up, right? Because the car manufacturer would say, "Oh, well, that's guaranteed funding and financing." It's just like, again, it supplements the demand that's out there, right? Again, artificially, probably, right? People would just get a car because they, what the heck? I can borrow $5,500. I got to come up with the rest. That's no problem. That's my down payment. You see how that would happen, right? So like some people get internally, I'm just speaking too, and like the people I know that I talked about this, they get irked with like, well, college, you need to have it. It has to be a path. You have to provide this. It's like, it's true. And people get emotional about it. But I'm like, what happens if it was a car? And then they go, well, you shouldn't do it for a car. I'm like, okay, well, what's the real difference? You know?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
It's a total mindset shift, right? And I think, and again, I'm really curious to hear again, especially for you counselors, like, did you have any of the knee jerks that I heard of, like, that I had of like, no, you need this federal direct student loan. We have to have that. Like, that's, the starting point. Again, I'll just kind of be curious because in some ways, I think part of my visceral reaction of being opposed to it was just I don't know, being in this world for too long and just kind of being blinded to a different perspective.
hmm.
So anyway, I'm
Well, and
curious.
it's like, I think how Peg phrases it, right? She's like, if a student is walking away with a college degree and only has the 27,000, 28,000 bucks in debt, like that's a good outcome. That's
Yeah,
reasonable.
yeah.
And that's not wrong. That's true. But I don't think that shouldn't be the place we want to end up, right? Necessarily, So I think that's, even though that is a recommended, like we'd say, all right, you end in a good place. That's probably good ROI for you. It's still misaligning incentives of like the receiver of those money of that capital, right? So yeah, if I, again, from scratch, I would say remove that sort of guaranteed entitlement.
No, you're right. And I want to hit on the kind of quickly on these two other points. I want to make sure I forgot to flag this at the top, but specifically for you Power School Naviance users, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Days. We want to give you a visual because we got an exciting partnership with that program where now you can have access to College Aid Pro. I don't want to say now, but it's very much towards the finish line in terms of being built. So hopefully you kind of perked up if you are and let us know if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat if you're a Power School user, or if you're Score, Zillow, My Learning, School Links, right? Let us know which platform that you're using at your school, because we're talking every single one of those that I just mentioned and are trying to get, largely based on the feedback from you all, deeper integrations with each one of them. So you guys, or to your point, a lot of you as school counselors would be like, your platform is awesome. This is great, but I don't want to ask my parents or to create another account, have another sign in, whatever. So we took that very seriously, and we're trying, again, are in the process of breaking ground with just about each of those groups. So I want to show you that in a second, but first, two more things I kind of want to put a bow on in terms of like what's happening and our take on it. Number one, curious to get your solution, Degs, in terms of like, well, this Pell Grant, for part-time students, how do we thread the needle there, and specifically how we think merit should play a role in a lot of this, right? In that
Mhm.
one specifically. And then again, this college accountability piece, how we think our kind of high level thought process on what we think is fair in terms of their role there.
Yeah. So the right. So the three parts of the kind of position is reevaluate, reform the capital that's involved here, right? Turn off the easy money. The initial criticism we have is like, all right, well, that would make it harder for many students to go to college, right? That's just going to make it harder off the bat, right? There's a great question about how long some of these changes would take to reset the market. I think it's to answer that as part of this is I think that can be relatively quick in many instances, because if you turn off the easy money, the number of kids going to college right away, 4-year college, right, will be impacted, right? Because if you turn off the federal government loan programs and you kind of make people rely on the private markets, and students and families are allowed to get rid of these in bankruptcy, the rates people get will be more representative of what is being purchased, right? Which again is in question. Is the college degree worth it? Is it experiential only? Is it for getting an education and a job? Like, is it all? It's all of these things. But what are you at a core? What are you willing to pay for? Right? Is it a 4-year overnight camp for your kid? Right? Like these are things I've heard people say. Um, so the reality is, if you turn off make it harder to get capital, fewer kids are going to go to school. If your kids go to school and the beds aren't filled, some of these schools' budgets are pretty tight already. They're not going to survive, right? They're not going to be able to make it, and students are going to have to find alternative ways to go to college. And so our thought there was, okay, well, how can you do that, right? And it's facilitating other paths, right? Community college in many states is free currently for a lot of people, right? There's ways to do that where it's expanded to the federal government can pitch into that, or they cannot. You can have certain states that compete with one another. Where in Massachusetts, it's free to go to community college, but in other states, it might not be, right? These are things residents can consider. I do think, one thing if like our social contract with one another, right? We got to find a way to make higher education accessible. And I think making community college and trade schools free is one way this can be done. And it's already happening in many instances in many states, whether that's mandated at a federal level or not, could be discussed. But I think, again, our social contract in terms of what we're doing to facilitate higher education is rewarding achievement, right? And commitment. The biggest problem with the student debt crisis, arguably, is students that go to college, borrow a ton of money, and then don't even finish, right? That's the most painful thing you see, and you see it all the time. So, if we're going to turn off the easy money, make the rates and the borrowing match the actual cost of what you're being paid for, that'll help reset some of the costs, right? And make it more direct line of this is what you're getting by going to college. This is why it's making you have a better life. This is why the ROI is clear. The question is, like, what else are we going to do to kind of encourage people and reward them for being a good student or committed to doing this, right? And Pell Grant, I think, has to stay, right? Like that is part of something we would highly recommend. Low income, where you come from and what resources you're coming from is going to have an impact on where you're able to go with, in life. And so we want to be able to facilitate folks who are committed to that and doing a job, getting good grades in high school, getting good standardized test scores, going to community college and succeeding, right? Even if it's part-time, if you're getting passing grades and you're showing up and you're doing what you got to do and you have proof of employment, like we shouldn't punish these people, right? So I think part-time Pell should stay alive, again, under certain requirements, again, tied to achievement and completion. I think it's completely reasonable, and the paperwork shouldn't be too burdensome, right? We should be able to track that stuff fairly easily. And then, the kind of achievement grants, I think, is something else we would create, right? And we'll talk more about this in the position paper that goes, the portion of the position paper that goes through that. But for students who, all right, I graduated high school, I'm a good student, I'm not going to get into the Ivy League school, so need-based, aid might be off the table. I have to figure out what I'm going to do here. I can't afford the private schools because the private loan markets won't kind of equip me. But guess what? I can go to community college in my local, my local community. You can use the Pell Grants. You can borrow additional money to go and do that. There should be the markets will, the debt markets will react accordingly. Where that investment is smaller, it's more reasonable. There's a direct line. And if you do well, you go there, you go to class, you get good grades, you progress. I think there should be additional Pell Grants called achievement grants that we can provide, so that the community college can turn into a 4-year degree fairly easily, and then we'll finance that, right? And again, the credit markets will recognize that, and you'll get a better rate if you have this track record of going through and doing it. So like some of the criticisms, and I get it, right? If we turn off the easy money from the government, we can't rely on the private markets to take care of this. And yeah, that can sound scary, but the reality is that's what we want. We want that to happen. We want the right paths to be rewarded, right? This is how, you know, the capitalism works, right? So yeah, throwing a lot out there, Matt. I don't know if you want to cherry pick a couple of those or if I missed anything, but this is why we need 3 position papers. There's a lot to go into.
Yeah, that's right. Well, no. I think, and I want to make sure we leave some time to kind of show Power School, because we're going to continue to be talking about this for weeks and months and years, right? I mean, this is what we, as long as they'll have us around, this is the stuff we're talking about. So I think my biggest get for you is just to kind of introduce you to these school counselors today and just kind of give some of your perspective specifically. I mean, I think for us, the college accountability piece is almost intuitive, where we got to hold these stakeholders. I think this is what they've been getting away with the most. We might argue, right? I would say, and not getting enough. I don't know. They don't have the same consequences that, for example, students and parents have. As there's enough real world consequences.
Yeah, and again, there's more to this, and I'll definitely avoid going on a tangent, but like the college accountability piece touches directly on the financing portion, right? If you're Matt and I both went to Stonehill, so say we both try to go to Stonehill into this new paradigm, and you know the private markets, or we can't get financing, or we don't love the terms we're getting. You know, Stonehill should have the option, you know, maybe they want to lend from their endowment to people like us, because they're going to basically say, you know, no, what we're charging is legitimate, and it's going to be worth it, and we'll underwrite your education for you, right? Or they co-sign as put their name on the dotted line with the private lenders to get you a better rate, right? There's a world where, again, the loan markets can solve for that, where it's like, okay, if the value is clear and the college is willing to stand on it, and they got assets and other things to back it up, right, to make it so that the rates are more palatable, that's how you get there, right? That's a part of this.
And this is the concept that, again, just most recently got proposed this week, right? Where they said when the Department of Education is saying that, look, there's going to be consequences if your graduates are not repaying their student loans, or they don't graduate with this money that we as the federal government has lent them, we're going to hold you accountable. So this forces the school to say, we got to make sure we have to our bottom line is going to be impacted if our students are not graduating and then having, great opportunities, when they graduate. So again, conceptually, this is something that seems to be heading, in the right direction. But Degs, if you want, why don't you give these folks? And again, I see there's some Zello guys on here, some Score guys on here. Again, we're having some great conversations with those folks. So I think it's just a more of a when than if, in terms of interacting with those platforms. But we're probably furthest ahead with Naviance/Power School, so we can kind of give you a visual of how that's going to look once we're live.
And we get to do this live, buddy. I get to point out the Power School versus the other platform differences, right? So
that's right. I need the education there. So please, I am now in the audience.
I know. So the audience knows more than you. So and they probably definitely know more than me. But Power Schools is a student information system, right? So SIS. So they help manage the kind of attendance record, the grades, the different things for the different school districts, right? And the Naviance Scores, Zellos, Maya Learnings of the world, they're kind of a student application admissions management platforms, right? They help the students inside a high school figure out where they want to go, right? So yeah, so the one thing we hear from our users all the time, counselors as well, is like, all right, I just need, how can we better engage your families? And of course, everyone's like, can you just combine into one platform so everybody's just in one place, fewer places to log into? Because again, there's Power School SIS, there's other SIS systems that are out there. There's these, again, kind of college admissions management platforms like Naviance, Zello, Score. Then there's stuff like us, right? College Aid Pro that's helping with the financial aid side. So one of the basic requests we get all the time is, can you just all combine into one place? And we're working on that, to Matt's point, right? We're very much working on that to make it easy. So you're not inputting the same data multiple times or making things more streamlined. And to this end, and again, and all those are in progress, and we're very excited to keep pushing those forward. But right now, Power Schools, which is one of the, I think, the biggest platforms out there for, at the SIS, a lot of school districts, it's a pretty big number of districts around the country have it. We are integrated now. We're an integration partner with their platform. So I'll pull up kind of a mock-up that's being worked on, and it'll be live in probably another month. But basically, if your school district is a user of Power School, you'll be able to access College Aid Pro or certain parts of College Aid Pro within your Power School app. So whether it's the student or the parent who's not logging in, you're going to be able to kind of connect to some of the great stuff we do, specifically on the merit scholarship side, right? The reason for this is, we require academics of the student to do our merit projections, right? As the merit portion of the net cost we project and all the great things associated with that. The student academics are most important. And that's already exists for Power School families, right? But by nature, that's where the teacher and the administrators are entering the grades and information and tracking things, the counselors. So it's in there already. And so we're able to tap into that, and you can kind of, via that platform, connect here. So again, this isn't live, but it will be live soon for any Power School users, right? You'll have a College Aid Pro logo on your navigation bar. Again, this is for students or parents. It'll again prompt you to select a college, and when you do that, it'll kind of bring up some information about you, about the student, right? Kind of zip code, high school graduation year, GPA, SAT, ACT, class rank, right? All the things we need to project specific merit scholarships. Enter the college you're looking at, right? So you'll put in Stonehill College, Boston University, Boston College, MIT, and it'll come up, and say get merit scholarships. And then within the Power School app, you'll then get a report, right? It'll say, okay, here's the school you looked at, Ohio State University. It'll have some specifics about the school. It'll say what the merit projection is we're giving for that particular student, based on their profile. And then at the bottom, we'll list all of the merit scholarships available at that school with the criteria available, right? So for anybody who's familiar with the MyCap platform, this is what we do, right? For the merit portion inside of our platform. This does not include the need-based aid side of things, because we need to know more information for that. But this is great for a lot of students who are just trying to figure out, where might I qualify for more merit aid? If a parent or a counselor is trying to prompt a student to try a little harder, get that B into an A, or that 1,200 or 1,300 on the SAT, what does it mean at the specific schools you're looking at? This is a great place you could do it. Like just that portion, right? You don't need to do all the family finances. We highly recommend that somebody does that at some point, but within the Power School app, you can do this stuff. And again, there's zero extra information other than telling us in here that what school college you're looking at, right? For those folks too that then want to say, okay, I want to see the full picture of what my financial aid picture will look like at Ohio State or any school I'm looking at, you can then single sign on from here to go to MyCap, right? So if you click this button, opt into the terms and conditions, it'll shoot you over to MyCap. You'll have a pre-populated profile with all the information we already know from your Power School, profile. And then, we'll ask you additional questions we need to get you the full picture, right? And then again, it's single sign on, fairly easy. You don't need to go through a whole nother process, leverage a platform you're already familiar with. And so we're excited about this. We're hoping it can be another arrow in the quiver of counselors who are trying to get parents and families and students to engage on the cost side of things.
Dave's great question here from Caroline. Do you have to be a CAP partner to have the CAP icon show up in Naviance, right, in order to see it, or is that for anybody that's in Naviance?
So anybody who's a Power School, this is a great point. So anybody who's on the call today or on the webinar and is a Power School district or high school, what have you, reach out, because we're looking for some schools that can beta test this with us and trial it. You don't have to be a CAP partner. You don't have to be a paying partner. We will charge you nothing, right? This is just to make it easier for families to access the great information we have. And you just need an approval at the kind of whoever the tech administrator is, your district will just kind of allow this, and then it's in there, and that's it. And so if anybody's interested and want to get on the kind of short list of people to test this out with us, please let us know, and we'd be happy to do that with you. Again, it's it's almost ready. We probably won't launch it for another few weeks because we got MyCap 2.0 coming out. But very much eager to have some volunteers.
Yeah, and another question is, and I guess we'll have to get better at this as we get more experience with this with Power School and how they work. Um, but another counselor is asking, who do we contact for that to occur, right? Who do we? And I think the question here is, if you want to contact us, just write it into support at collegeaidpro.com or counselor at collegeaidpro. That's the better email. I'm
Yeah,
putting
yeah,
this
that's
in the
yeah.
chat now. Counselor at collegeaidpro.com. And in terms of who do you contact again at your school, your district, whatever, I think there's going to be some variation here, right? But it's the tech administrator usually.
Or obviously depends on the size of the district and the county and what state you're in and what kind of resources you have. But a lot of times there'll be a tech administrator for whoever the mother entity is, the county, the district, the high school, the town, I don't know. But whoever implements that kind of stuff at your district would be the person to say, you know, you need to get their approval because it's really easy. We'd send them the stuff they need to kind of put it in the platform, and there's very little. It's a light lift for that side. It's just sort of the approval process. We just want to make sure we're getting the sign-offs from the right people.
And then we'll help you. We'll make it very easy on you for how to say, okay, you got approval at the district level or the school level, whatever. Now it's there in your Power School. Now it's just kind of up to you, or we get a partner together to let parents know it exists, right? Let students know it exists. Let them know it's there. We'll make that easy on you, but that's kind of the next step after that,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, and I see some asked here as well. Does Power School have to agree for that to happen? We're an integrated partner. So basically how it works with Power School is we've worked with their tech team to make sure our plugin works the way we want it to and looks as the way we want it to. But then it's on us to work with the counselors and the school districts to say, do you want this in your family's experience, basically? And we can just plug it in. So, we get the yes from you and we send you the information. It's done. Power School, they don't sign, they've already signed off on everything, basically.
Yeah, exactly. We do. That's taken care of. So, all right, beautiful. Well, thanks. Kept you longer than I said I would, but them's the breaks, buddy. So
This is why you don't have me. This is why I don't come on that often. I have a lot to say, apparently.
yeah.
So
Well, hey, look
we
I'm
get
trying
going.
to tell you, time flies, buddy. Time flies when you're having fun. So, look, you will be invited back if I have anything to say about it, which I do. But yeah, thanks, guys. Great questions as always. Please keep them coming. Again, if you do not partner with us already, please book some time with us. And specifically, guys, or even if you do partner with us, but you want to learn more and get a little bit more granular around this integration specifically, and some others that are right around the corner here, please do find some time, and we'll make this come to fruition pretty quickly here. All right, Dex. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Thanks, everybody.
Let's do lunch.
Yeah.